Today we are constructing a cylinder. We're working on top of the same drawing that we've been working on. I taped mine down to the table, and then you're going to cut another sheet of tissue paper and we're going to make an overlay. In order to keep our place and not get confused, you want to register this overlay. So that just means give yourself some indications of where certain parts go where. I'm going to use my central plumb line from our first cube, our horizon line, which is off screen for you, and I'm going to make one more. So I'm going to kind of anywhere you want that's out of your way. I'm going to use the end of my page as a registration mark. I'm just going to make a little line. Then I'm going to use my center plumb line for a very professional X. A regular X that you just freehand also works. Okay, so I cover my registration marks. I'm going to tape it down. Then I'm going to use a straight edge to kind of finish my registration mark. So that means I'm going to follow this plumb line and my horizon line. So remember, a cylinder, by definition, this is a great matte black paint if you need it, is a form that has two vertical sides parallel to each other, and then the ends are circles. Okay. There is also a central axis, in this case it's invisible, running through the length of the cylinder. Okay. So because we're in 2-point perspective and the position of this cylinder is such that it is not parallel to the picture plane, our circular ends will become foreshortened circles, aka ellipses. So I'm going to show you two different ways to plot a foreshortened circle. The first method for plotting a foreshortened circle is going to be referred to here as the 16 square method. Okay, so we're going to be working on the bottom face of our cylinder because this method is more complicated and we have a little bit more room. So the first thing we need to do is find the diagonals of this square. I'm going to use my triangle as my straight edge. I'm also going to use colored pencil. Okay, so I'm going from corner to corner, both ways. The next thing we want to do is take our long ruler and connect our vanishing points through this, what is called center point. We know this is the center of our square. All right, so what this gives us is 4 squares, okay? The next thing we're going to do in order to make more squares is we're going to find the diagonal of the left and right squares. So we do that the same way we did with our big square. We run a diagonal. We already have one diagonal, if you look at it, so we only have to make one mark in each. So line up these two corners. Oops, give yourself room to make the mark. Great. We're doing the same with this square. Oh. Okay. Now, we are going to run our long ruler from each of our vanishing points through these new center points. Okay, see how this gave us 4 long rows? When we go through this way to our right vanishing point, we're going to turn those into 16 squares. So I'm coming through this center point I found in my right vanishing point. It lines up, if you do things right, it should line up with this, making our center point. We just have one more to do. Voila. At this point, we have 16 squares, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. We can find our 4 points of tangency. Think of the record in the record sleeve, right? There are 4 moments on this square where a circle inscribed perfectly inside of it would make contact, and that's going to be at the center of each edge. Remember, these are points of tangency. So we've got 4 of these guys. Okay, we're going to find the diagonals of our outer corner squares. So this square, this square, this square, and this square. This is going to give us the center point of those squares. So these center points are going to help us find 4 more points that will make up our ellipse. All right? So within each of them, locate the center point and very mathematically come just a tiny bit in. Sorry, that's not precise. Find the center, come a tiny bit in. Find the center, come a tiny bit in. Find the center, a tiny bit in. Right? So now we have 8 points. And if you think of it kind of like a constellation, the next step is just to connect them, creating an ellipse. Remember what you know about an ellipse, right? First, there are no flat or pointy parts. So, knowing that, I am going to take these edges that could potentially be terrible footballs and very lightly make sure I have a curve instead of a point. Okay? When you are drawing an ellipse, you always want to work lightly because you're probably going to have to make some adjustments. So have a very sharp point and a very light hand. At first glance, I don't see any glaring errors. This guy seems like it could come out a tiny bit. You may have noticed, as artists and people who draw, that certain curves are easier to make for your hand. It's because your hand is sort of a compass. So I am right-handed, and that means that my wrist is kind of like the center fulcrum point of a compass. So I'm able to get a really graceful curve going this way, but then this way is awkward because this is not as easy of a motion to make as just kind of swinging your wrist. So if you need to like change your relation to the drawing, or if this weren't taped down, turn it, that'll help you make more graceful curves in the future. Okay, no flat parts, no pointy parts. It's looking pretty good. Now, remember what we know about an ellipse. It's going to be bilaterally symmetrical, meaning it will have a major axis across which it is mirrored and a minor axis across which it is mirrored. Another thing we know about this ellipse is because we're trying to draw it sitting straight on the ground plane, the central axis is going to be a vertical on our drawing, okay? I know that this central point is going to be related to our central axis. So if I wanted to, I could check a little bit on my ellipse by placing my perfect vertical tool, my triangle, through here. And that kind of helps me look at just one side at a time. Do they seem symmetrical? I kind of feel like this side is a little fuller than that side. So I have some choices. It could mean that this needs to creep in. It could mean that this comes out. I actually kind of feel like this side might come out a little bit. That's our minor axis of the ellipse. I'm coming out. Let's take a look. That feels better. Something else I'm noticing is that this guy's a little flat. We'll just lift it up a little bit. Okay. I think we did pretty good. If you want to look at the major axis, that's going to be a perfect horizontal too. So you could line this up against your central plumb line. And it's going to be the widest part of our ellipse. It may not necessarily follow the diagonal of the square. Remember that very confusing bit of information I shared with you? So I'm just going to keep sliding down until my ellipse gets no wider. That feels pretty good. I think they match. Again, this feels fuller than that. So maybe what really needs to happen is that this guy comes in. I'm comparing this edge to this edge. And I remember he was a problem before. All right. Seems like a viable ellipse.